I moved to this small town a few weeks ago, hoping to find some inspiration for my writing. I was 32 and figured a quiet environment would spark my creativity. On one of my first outings, I decided to explore the local cemetery. I had heard people say it was a peaceful spot. The weathered headstones looked interesting, and the shade from the old oak trees felt calming. But when I walked through the paths, I couldn't shake this feeling of unease. Something about the place chilled me, but I shrugged it off. It was just me being new to the area, right? My first visit was sunny and calm. I wandered around, snapping photos of the graves. I stopped at a crumbling gravestone at the edge of the way, and that when I saw an old journal lying next to it. I picked it up and flipped through the pages. The handwriting was shaky but held deep emotions. I got a chill when I read the last entry. It warned of a storm hitting that very night. I felt something strange, as though the journal wanted me to do something. In the following week, I returned several times, hoping for more inspiration. One day, while I was trying to capture a perfect shot, I heard footsteps behind me. I spun around but saw no one. I shook my head, thinking I was imagining things. But then, I bumped into a man. He looked out of place, disheveled, and he asked if I had seen his sister. She had been missing for decades and was buried somewhere in the cemetery. I felt a wave of dread wash over me. Things got weirder on my next visits. The journal was gone, but instead, strange photographs appeared. They showed people standing by graves that looked familiar. I noticed that they seemed to be people I'd seen on my visits. It made me feel cold when I spotted a photo of the disheveled man among them. I asked other visitors about him, but no one knew who he was. I felt like I was trapped, as if the cemetery didn't want me there. One day, crouched down to take a close-up shot, I heard those footsteps again. They started slow but sped up, echoing around me. My heart raced. I jumped up and looked around, but it was just the trees, swaying in the wind. I could feel eyes on me, as if something wanted me to leave but held me in place. In that moment, the man appeared again. He stood at the path, not far off. My stomach twisted, and I approached him. "Are you okay?" I asked. He stared at me blankly. His lips moved, but I couldn't hear him. Finally, he spoke, "Why are you with her?" My breath caught in my throat as I glanced around. There was no one there. I looked back at him, but he was gone. Now, I can't shake the feeling that I'm connected to that cemetery somehow. I wonder if I'm losing touch with reality or if something truly dark lurks there. Was I drawn to it, or was it drawing me in? I keep replaying that question in my mind, feeling the weight of it heavy in my chest. The next morning, I woke up with a knot in my stomach. The cemetery's shadows felt like they were creeping into my dreams. I decided I needed to confront what was happening, so I set out again, determined to clear my mind. As I walked through the gates, the air changed. It felt thick and heavy. I told myself I was just being paranoid, but I couldn't ignore the chill running down my spine. I wandered over to that crumbling gravestone where I had found the journal. I needed to remind myself of the last entry, the storm warning. When I reached it, I noticed something strange. A small trinket was lying at the base of the headstone, a delicate silver locket. I picked it up, and a shiver shot through me. The locket was warm, as if it had been resting in someone's hand. I opened it, but it was empty inside. Then I heard a whisper. "Help her." It was faint, like the rustling of leaves, but I knew I heard it. My heart raced. I looked over my shoulder, half expecting to see the disheveled man, but the path was empty. I shook my head and focused on the locket again. I glanced around, feeling like I was being watched. My hands trembled as I placed the locket in my pocket. A part of me urged me to leave, but another part wanted answers. I followed the path deeper into the cemetery. Suddenly, I heard the footsteps again. This time, they were closer, echoing in a way that felt intent. I turned on my heel, and there he was, the man, standing just a few feet away. My pulse quickened. "What do you mean, help her?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. The man met my gaze, his eyes filled with a sorrow that felt ancient. "She's lost. You can find her," he said, his voice barely more than a whisper. "Who?" I replied, desperate for clarification. "Who do you mean?" He pointed toward an area further into the trees, a place I hadn't noticed before. My breath caught again. I could barely think. All those visits, all that fear, it had led me here. I had to know what lay beyond. But before I could say anything else, the man flickered in and out of view like an old film reel, his image warping as if he was being pulled by an unseen force. He mumbled, "The storm, it's coming." Then, he vanished completely. I stood frozen for a moment, the whisper still echoing in my mind. I hesitated, looking toward where he had pointed. Part of me screamed to run, but I couldn't shake the feeling that I had to go deeper. I took a step forward, then another. Every intuition told me to turn back. The cemetery felt different, alive in ways I didn't understand. My grip tightened around the locket in my pocket as I walked toward the trees. That was when I heard it, a low, distant rumble. It sounded like thunder, but the skies were still clear. My heart raced as I trudged on. To my horror, I wasn't alone anymore. Shadows flickered at the edges of my vision. I turned, and that's when I saw something that made my blood run cold, a figure standing just beyond the trees, its presence demanding my attention. I locked eyes with it, and the weight in my chest grew heavier. Something told me that I was about to learn something I wasn't prepared for. It stood motionless, a silhouette against the dappled light filtering through the branches. My heart slammed in my chest, an unwanted drumbeat urging me to flee. But my feet felt glued to the ground. Something compelled me to stay. The figure remained silent, but I could sense its energy, a pull that felt both warm and cold. I took a small step forward, and as I did, the shadows behind it shifted, swirling like smoke. I squinted, trying to discern more details, but the figure was cloaked in darkness. Then, without warning, it raised a hand. I braced myself, unsure of what this gesture meant. My mind raced through every horror story I'd ever heard about spirits and restless souls. I wanted to look away, but I couldn't. "Help her," the whisper echoed again, but this time, it was clearer and seemed to emanate from the figure itself. My heart raced. Was this the same message I heard before? Was it a plea? I mustered the courage to ask, "Who do you mean? Who needs help?" It came out harsher than I meant, tinged with uncertainty. I felt foolish talking to a shadow, but desperation gave me strength. In response, the figure pointed deeper into the trees, just as the man had. It felt like an invitation, but the hidden path ahead seemed foreboding, a portal to unknown horrors. The rumbling noise returned, now closer, vibrating through the ground beneath me. I glanced back the way I came, the sun shining brightly outside the cemetery gates. Shouldn't I feel safe? Yet here I was, surrounded by darkness and unknown threats. I turned back to the figure, but it had stepped forward just a bit, as if urging me to follow. My instincts screamed at me to leave, but I pushed those feelings aside. I couldn't turn back now. I took a deep breath and stepped closer to the trees. Suddenly, the locket in my pocket felt hot against my skin. I instinctively pulled it out, clutching it tightly. As I held it up to the figure, the dull warmth shifted to a strange pulse, as if it were alive. The figure's gaze, intense and penetrating, seemed to lock onto the locket. It flickered for a brief moment, as if becoming more tangible. "Please," the voice came again, sounding desperate now. My resolve began to waver. What was I really stepping into? The cemetery felt like a labyrinth of unanswered questions and looming dangers. Just as I was about to turn back, the ground beneath me trembled, sending a wave of panic through my body. The rumbling intensified, and the air thickened around me. Whatever was coming was closer now. I could feel it. "Don't," the figure warned, its voice reverberating through the wood. "You can't leave." A chill ran through me, all the certainty I had been holding on to evaporating. I felt trapped. And then I noticed something glinting at the base of an old tree behind the figure. As I squinted to see, a realization settled in my chest: an old, rusted key. "What is that?" I gasped, pointing. The figure's expression shifted, and a sense of urgency filled the air. I didn't know what it meant or what would happen next, but I knew I had to reach that key. Before I could process anything further, the shadows around us stirred violently, and I knew whatever was coming was not going to wait much longer. The moment I pointed to the key, the atmosphere crackled with tension. The figure's hand dropped, and for a fraction of a second, I thought I saw fear in its shadowy form. I was frozen, caught between the seduction of the key and the ominous vibrations of the earth beneath me. I could hear a low growl echoing in the background, and panic tightened my throat. "Get it!" the figure urged, its voice urgent. "Now!" I jolted. Without thinking, I dashed towards the tree, my feet pounding against the ground like a drum, the key glittering in my line of sight. As I ran, the rumbling noise escalated, turning into a thunderous roar. The shadowed landscape twisted and turned, branches clawing at my clothes as if trying to pull me back. I reached the base of the tree, bending down and fumbling for the key. It was cold and heavy in my palm, slick with dampness from the earth. I looked up to see the figure watching me, its features sharpening just enough to suggest something human. There was urgency, almost desperation coursing through its presence. "Unlock the past," it implored, its voice echoing like a chant. "Her life depends on it." I glanced back towards the path I'd just come from, fear flooding my chest. What was pursuing me? If the figure wanted me to unlock the past, what did it mean? I had so many questions, but time was running out. Whatever shadow was lurking in the underbrush was rapidly closing in. I stood there, the key in one hand and the locket in the other, feeling the pull between the two. Was this all connected? Did I need to open something to help whoever was calling out for aid? I felt a weight of responsibility settle on my shoulders, but fear threatened to swallow me whole. "Please." The figure pleaded again, its essence flickering like a dying flame. "She needs you." Before I could answer, a shadow lunged from the underbrush, swirling like a living thing. I barely had time to register it before instinct kicked in. I raised the key and swung it toward the figure, as if offering it up in sacrifice. All I could do was hope there was more to this than I understood. The moment the key met the figure's form, it flickered violently, revealing a glimpse of what lay beneath the shadows: a young woman with wild hair, her eyes beseeching me for help. I gasped, the realization striking me like a bolt of lightning. Then everything went dark. The sensation of falling surrounded me, the world blurring into chaos. A deafening silence enveloped me, swallowing my thoughts and fears. Had I done something wrong? Where was I? I couldn't see, couldn't breathe. Panic gripped me tighter than ever. The key slipped from my fingers, and a strangled scream echoed around me, merging with the darkness. Something cold and clammy brushed against my arm. I jolted upright, my heart racing as I blinked into the pitch blackness. I was no longer in the woods. I didn't recognize this place, but I knew I had to find that key. Time was running out, and I couldn't shake the feeling I was being watched. My breath came in short gasps, and I strained to make sense of my surroundings. The air was thick and damp, carrying an earthy smell that made my stomach turn. I turned slowly, scanning the darkness for any signs of life or danger. Then, breaking through the silence, I heard a soft drip, drip, drip like water falling from a leaky faucet. I stepped carefully, my shoes squelching on what felt like wet ground. Each sound echoed around me, amplifying my anxiety. I felt claustrophobic even in the open space. In the shadows, I caught glimpses of strange shapes, tombstones maybe. Their stark silhouettes loomed like sentinels against the night. "Hello?" I called out, my voice barely above a whisper. There was no reply. The only sound was the persistent drip that seemed to come from somewhere close. I stumbled forward, instinctively feeling along the ground until my fingers traced cold stone. Then I realized I was in a graveyard. The realization sent a chill down my spine. What had drawn me here? Was this where the figure had meant for me to end up? I felt an overpowering urge to get out, but the key was gone. I started moving, each step feeling heavier than the last. With every passing moment, the feeling of being watched grew stronger. I could almost feel eyes on my back, pricking my skin. I turned to look, but all I could see were the graves silent and unmoving. I swallowed hard. I needed to focus. The key had to be here somewhere. Then something caught my eye, a flicker of light off in the distance. My heart skipped. This might be my chance. I hurried toward it, my footsteps quickening as hope surged within me. The glow illuminated a figure, cloaked in shadows, standing by a particularly large tombstone. My instincts screamed at me to turn back. "Stop!" A voice boomed from the figure. I froze, panic pressing against my chest. "You shouldn't be here." "Why?" I managed to breathe, trying to sound braver than I felt. "What is this place? Where is the key?" "The key unlocks chaos," it answered cryptically. "And what you seek is not meant for you." Fear clawed at my throat, and I felt so small under the weight of its words. The light flickered again, more intensely this time, casting long shadows that seemed to dance around the graves. I felt that the key wasn't just a physical object. It was tied to something bigger, something that had been buried here, intertwined with the lost souls around me. Before I could respond, the figure raised a hand, a dark mist swirling around it. "You must turn back while you still can." Just then, a thunderous boom echoed from above, and darkness enveloped the graveyard. I stumbled back, disoriented. Then, I heard whispers, soft, insistent murmurs weaving through the air, drawing me closer. "Find her," they whispered, "before it's too late." That's when I saw it, the glimmering key, lying half buried in the mud, pulsing with a faint light. My heart raced. Should I take it? Did I dare? Just as I bent down to reach for it, the shadows around me thickened, and the air crackled with energy. I had to act fast. As the darkness closed in, the whispers grew louder, urgent, frantic. I felt a presence behind me, something hungry and desperate. I had only moments to decide. Should I reach for the key, or run? I reached for the key, my fingers scraping against the cold, muddy surface. The moment I touched it, a surge of energy coursed through me. The whispers intensified, ringing in my ears like 1,000 voices crying out in unison. "What have you done?" The figure's voice pierced through the chaos, a blend of anger and fear. "You don't understand." I jerked my hand back, the key still shining in my palm. It felt heavier than I expected, like it was somehow alive. I looked up, but the figure had moved closer, its shadow growing darker and more imposing. "You must let it go," it shouted, but I could hear the tremor in its voice. "I want tea. I have to find out." I shouted back, adrenaline fueling my resolve. The ground beneath me felt unstable, shifting as if trying to shake me free of this cursed place. That's when I heard it again, a distant laughter, low and mocking, floating through the air like a veil. I spun around, searching for the source, but the graveyard was empty except for the tombstones. Panic gripped me as I realized that I was not alone, something else was here, lurking just beyond my sight. "Who is there?" I called, my voice trembling. The laughter stopped abruptly, replaced by a heavy silence that made my skin crawl. The figure moved forward, its face barely visible in the dim light. "You need to leave now." It stretched a hand toward me, but the shadows danced around it, growing thicker. "You have awakened what should have stayed buried." Suddenly, the key in my hand began to vibrate, heat radiating from it as if it had a pulse. The ground shook, and I stumbled backward, fighting to maintain my balance. "What do you mean?" I demanded, desperation leaking into my tone. "What is going to happen?" "Find her." The figure shouted, urgency stark in its voice. "Find her before the darkness consumes you." Before I could grasp what was happening, the shadows surged forward, wrapping around me like a living creature. I felt a cold grip seize my heart, squeezing tighter with every passing second. "No!" I gasped, struggling against the pull. Then a flash of light erupted from the key, bursting forth like an explosion. The shadows recoiled, and the laughter turned into horrified screams that echoed around me. The figure shielded its eyes, and I took a step back, my heart pounding. When the light faded, I found myself back at the edge of the graveyard, breathing heavily. I blinked, disoriented, the key still clutched tightly in my hand. Everything felt distant, like I had stepped between worlds. Yet in that moment, I knew I had chosen a path I couldn't turn back from. The whispers faded into silence, but the urgency remained. I had to find who I was meant to seek. I had to understand this connection. But before I could think, the ground trembled again, and a chilling wind tore through the graveyard. I turned slowly, my instincts flaring. Something was coming, and I wasn't ready for what I would find next. As I stood there, the air around me thickened with an unease that settled like a fog. My heart raced as I looked around the graveyard, desperately searching for any sign of movement. The wind howled, carrying whispers that danced on the fringes of my hearing. What had I done? Then I felt a tingling sensation at the base of my spine. I froze, trying to pinpoint the source. A shadow flickered past my peripheral vision, and I whipped around, but nothing was there. Just the tombstones, solemn and still. My gut churned. With a deep breath, I took a cautious step forward. The key felt heavy in my pocket, as if it were anchoring me to this unnatural place. I glanced back at the graves, their weathered inscriptions fading into the encroaching night. I could almost hear the grounds keeping their secrets buried deep beneath the earth. "Who are you looking for?" A voice cut through the silence, making me jump. It was soft, almost soothing, but I knew better than to trust it. "You're not supposed to be here." I turned slowly, facing an old woman emerging from between the stones. Her hair was a tangled mess, and her eyes gleamed with an unsettling intensity. "You shouldn't have taken that," she said, pointing to the key. "It's not for you." "Who are you?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. I wanted to run, but my legs felt like lead. "I'm someone who knows the truth." She stepped closer, her expression shifting from harsh to almost wistful. "You're looking for her. But you won't find what you expect." "What do you mean?" I pressed, curiosity overcoming my fear. The urgency from earlier still clawed at me. "What do I need to do?" She shook her head, her eyes darkening. "You'll need to make a choice. And it won't be easy." Suddenly, the ground beneath us rumbled again, bringing the woman to a halt. I glanced over my shoulder, and the shadows twisted, coiling like serpents hungrily eyeing their prey. I could feel their presence tightening around us, smothering the light. "Go. Now." She screamed, but I hesitated. Who was this woman? Did she truly know what was happening? "You must leave before it's too late." The shadows lunged forward, lunging for me as if drawn by my fear. I turned and ran. My breath came in ragged gasps as I darted through the gravestones, the laughter returning, darker and more mocking than before. That's when I saw it, a faint glow, pulsing in the distance. It flickered, beckoning me. I sprinted toward it, desperation fueling my steps. But as I approached, it faded, leaving me stranded in darkness. "Find her." The old woman's voice echoed in my mind, a reminder of my mission. Uncover the truth. I was losing myself to the chaos, and now there was nowhere to go. The laughter grew louder, a maddening chorus. Just when I thought I couldn't take it anymore, I stumbled upon an old crypt at the edge of the graveyard, its door ajar. I had to make a decision. I could either turn back and face the darkness creeping in, or enter the crypt and find out what awaited inside. As the shadows closed in, I took a deep breath and stepped into the unknown. The moment I crossed the threshold of the crypt, a chill engulfed me like a damp cloak. The air was stale, thick with the scent of aged stone and something metallic that churned my stomach. I turned on my phone's flashlight, the beam cutting through the darkness, revealing walls covered in intricate carvings. They looked ancient, almost alive, as if the stone itself had breathed in a millennia of sorrow. As I stepped further inside, the door swung shut behind me with a heavy thud, sealing me in. Panic surged. I scrambled to pull at the handle, but it wouldn't budge. I was trapped. My mind raced as fear clawed at my insides. This was bad. Hello. I called out, my voice echoing softly. Is anyone there? No response. Just silence. I searched desperately for another way out, but the crypt appeared to be devoid of windows or additional doors. My only light flickered uncertainly, like my sanity. I noticed a stone altar at the center of the room. Above it, the carvings glowed faintly. The light intensified when I approached, illuminating symbols that made my heart race. Some I recognized from ancient lore, others were cryptic, swirling in patterns that twisted my mind. What were they trying to tell me? Suddenly, I spotted something on the altar. A small box, ornate and weathered, lay half-hidden beneath dust and shadows. I hesitated, the old woman's warning ringing in my ears. You'll need to make a choice. And it won't be easy. I took a deep breath and reached for it. Just as my fingers brushed the surface, a sudden chill swept through the room, compelling me to withdraw. The shadows danced wildly, closing in, but before I could fully react, I heard a low, mournful wail echoing through the crypt. I spun around, heart slamming against my chest. Who is there? I yelled, panic rising in my throat. The wail deepened, morphing into a chorus of voices, a cacophony of sobs mingling with laughter. The sound crashed over me like waves, suffocating me in uncertainty. I backed away from the altar, unsure of what I had just disturbed. The glow from the box pulsed rhythmically, and something within stirred. You came for her, a voice whispered, soft and sinister, as if it was woven from the shadows themselves. But what will you sacrifice to find her? What sacrifice? I hadn't come looking for a cost. I just wanted answers. My fingers curled into fists, frustration mingled with fear. I don't want anything. I just want to know the truth. The answer came swiftly, like a gust that sent my phone's light flickering. Truth comes at a price. Then everything went silent. The laughter stopped. The wail faded. My heartbeat thudded in my ears. All that remained was the rhythmic glow from the box. My breath hitched, I had to know what was inside. That's when I opened the box. Inside lay a delicate necklace, the centerpiece a dark stone that radiated warmth against my fingers. As soon as I touched it, a surge of memories flooded my mind, faces, places, and a haunting image of a girl standing by the grave marked with the same last name as mine. Suddenly, the crypt shook, and the air thickened again. The shadows crawled toward me, hungry and wild. I had awakened something, and now it was demanding to be released. I jerked back, cradling the necklace, heart pounding. What had I uncovered? And what would the shadows want from me next? I stumbled back, clutching the necklace tightly in my palms. The chill that filled the crypt felt more pressing now, a sentient force that wrapped around me. I wanted to crush the necklace in rage, but something held me back. I needed answers. The shadows flickered, weaving in and out of the edges of my vision. They were restless, inching closer as if hungry for the very air I breathed. I could hear whispers now, a rhythmic chant that seemed to pulse in time with the glow from the necklace. Each word was a foreign language, an incantation that wrapped around my thoughts. Find her, set her free. The voices were everywhere, pulling me deeper into the crypt's hold. I couldn't tell if I was in a trance or if the stone had some kind of power over me. I took one shaky step toward the altar, ready to confront whatever I had stirred. But before I could move closer, the ground beneath me cracked with a deafening roar, splitting open in a jagged line. I gasped and stumbled back, nearly tripping over my own feet. In that fleeting moment, I saw something rise from the depths below, a swirling mass of shadows that formed shapes, faces twisted in expressions of sorrow and fury. They reached out, fingers clawing at the air, desperate for something I didn't yet understand. "Stop!" I shouted, feeling more like a fool with every word. They didn't listen. As the swirling shadows drew near, a bone-chilling voice boomed from the depths, full of anguish. "You must choose. What do you want from me?" I cried, feeling the tears threaten to fall. The necklace burned in my grip, a warning or a plea, I wasn't sure. "Your past or your future," the voice hissed. "Sacrifice one to redeem the other." Confusion washed over me. I didn't want to sacrifice anything, I just wanted to get out of this cursed crypt. Images of the girl from the grave swirled in my mind again, but they were fading, slipping through my fingers like grains of sand. The shadows quieted, waiting for my answer. My heart raced as the weight of the decision crashed down on me. Where was the girl? Who was she? In that moment, I realized I had to make a choice. But what if I chose wrong? Before I could decide, the necklace felt heavier, pulling me towards the altar. I fought against it, but the call was too strong. Mustering every ounce of courage, I spoke, my voice barely above a whisper, "I choose to find her." Instantly, the shadows recoiled, and the ground shuddered again. The air thickened as if reality itself was bending, warping around my decision. The glowing symbols on the walls pulsed violently, and the link between past and future wavered. Then everything went dark. No light, no sound. I couldn't feel the necklace or the ground beneath me. Just emptiness. I braced myself for what was to come, my mind racing. What had I unleashed? And just as quickly, a single beam of light cut through the darkness, illuminating something in the distance. A figure stood just beyond reach, eyes glimmering like stars. "Find me," it beckoned softly, and in that moment, I knew this revelation would be just the beginning. My heart thundered in my chest as the figure in the light stepped closer, an ethereal radiance breaking through the suffocating darkness. It was a young woman, her wild hair framing a face that was both familiar and ghostly. I recognized her instantly, the girl from the grave, the one the old woman and the crypt had warned me about. But this time, she looked whole, vibrant, beckoning me to come closer. "Please," her voice was a gentle breeze, yet it carried the weight of an anchor. "You need to help me." I stumbled forward, drawn by a visceral urge. The shadows felt distant now, a mere memory. "What happened to you?" I demanded, needing to grasp the fragments scattered in my mind. "Why are you trapped here?" "The key you found unlocks my past," she replied, her gaze piercing through me. "But it also binds my spirit. You need to make a choice, but it won't be easy." The familiarity of her words echoed those of the old woman, tightening my chest with apprehension. "What do you mean?" My voice shook with uncertainty. "What do I need to do?" She pointed behind her to the shimmering portal that flickered like an unsteady flame, casting strange shadows against the walls that surrounded us. "You have to decide. There are fragments of my life that live in different worlds. Choose the one that leads to my freedom, or you will be lost to the darkness with the key." Fear washed over me, threatening to pull me under. There were infinite possibilities contained within the portal's glow, fragments of past lives I couldn't begin to comprehend. Ice washed through my veins as I thought of all that I could lose: my sanity, my freedom, my life as I knew it. Before I could draw another breath, the swirling shadows surged forward once more, hungry and insatiable. "You must choose," they roared, their anger boiling over. "I can't. I shouted, the weight of the decision crashing against me. I don't even know who you are. In that moment, a flicker of recognition flashed in her eyes. Seek the truth of yourself, and my truth will be revealed. I can guide you, but you must decide to embrace what lies within. The shadows rushed closer, and desperately, I clutched the necklace, feeling its warmth ripple against my skin. But I was afraid. What if I lost everything? Please, she urged again, desperation staining her voice. Help me find peace. You hold the key to both of our fates. I hesitated, my heart in turmoil. Was I ready to confront the deepest corners of my own past? Would I even survive the journey? The darkness pressed against me, and taking a breath of courage, I edged towards the portal. I choose to learn the truth, I declared aloud, trying to convince myself as much as her. Together, we'll find the path. With that, I stepped through the glowing threshold. Light engulfed me, pulling me in, warm and sharp at the same time. When I emerged, I found myself in a new terrain, a familiar graveyard, but it felt altered, charged with energy that vibrated in the air. The wind whispered secrets past my ears, and the ground hummed beneath my feet. There stood the large gravestone marking my family name, the name woven in lost stories and memories. The girl appeared beside me, not spectral anymore but as solid as I was, her expression filled with hope. This is where it begins. Tears stung my eyes as I reached for a small, worn photograph tucked into the stone's base, an image of her as a young girl, smiling with a sense of peace. You were never meant to suffer. Together, we'll uncover what binds you. As I held the photo, a soft light began to emanate from it. The shadows from before crept at the edges, but I stood firm, my hand gripping the necklace tight, knowing I had stepped onto a path where myriad questions still awaited. Will you help me release what binds me? She asked, her eyes shimmering with resolve. Before I could answer, the ground trembled once more, and vague silhouettes flickered in the distance. What lay ahead was uncertain, a dance between light and shadow, a journey yet untraveled. I grasped the girl's hand, knowing I might not return unchanged. I will, I said. My voice steady even as fear coiled in my gut. Together, we turned towards the gathering shadows, stepping forward into the unknown, realizing I could no longer separate the truth of her existence from my own. And still, even as we walked deeper into the fractured light that surrounded us, echoes of the past clung to my thoughts. What had we truly awakened? Would we find resolution, or would more mysteries unfold? I felt the weight of countless questions linger, but for now, one certainty remained: our fates were entwined, and perhaps from our journey, some remnants of darkness might finally find peace.